Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Spartan Stadium, Michigan State 2-2, coming off a tough loss to Maryland. Harlon Barnett out here positive again. J.D. Duplain positive, and I don't think they're sugarcoating it. I mean, that might change 4 or 5 weeks from now if they hit a losing streak, but right now they genuinely think they are better than that 31-9 score indicates. And if you watch that game, Michigan State won a lot of snaps, won a lot of plays, played well in a lot of ways. So those guys individually, a lot of those guys feel like they played better. A lot of those guys feel like they did the job. The scoreboard does not reflect it. And people on the outside, man, that's a blowout. That's ugly. That's a dumpster fire. Internally, I think it seems to me they're doing a good job of blocking that stuff out, which doesn't guarantee anything. It just thinks that I wouldn't be surprised. I think that they are not ready to fall apart just yet. They may never fall apart. And I think that they are better than that score indicates and better than the scores of the last 2 games indicate. And I think that's reflected by what they're saying. I'm buying it. They say they had a good practice today. I believe it. I don't know what that means for Saturday, but I think they're still sewn together pretty good right now.
I think it's pretty
as well as can be expected.
I feel the same way, and you can tell there's a difference between guys saying the right thing and guys saying the right thing with a certain level of energy. And what I saw today, whether it was Harlon Barnett or J.D. Duplain, those guys were saying the right thing, but they had a certain amount of energy behind it. And I felt the same thing after the loss. Talking to Aaron Brule after the loss, he was talking about, HB said some things, HB being Harlon Barnett. He said some things after the game that's got me wanting to play against Iowa right now. So I think the messaging on the part of Harlon Barnett has been really positive. And one of the things I've always known, respected about Harlon Barnett, he has the ability to make his guys feel like they're the best players in the world, regardless of whether they are or not. Now we've seen what some of his best players can do. The no-fly zone guys from the Rose Bowl era, those guys were some of the best in college football. These guys aren't, but these guys believe in themselves. And Harlon Barnett has the ability to give guys confidence and instill confidence, but it's not. I don't think it has to be a false confidence, because I think for those guys, they can look at the tape and say, if we did this, if we did this, if we did that, and Barnett said it as much in his press conference today. He talked about missed opportunities on offense, defense, and special teams. Of course, we're going to talk about the ones on offense. 5 turnovers, drop passes on potential touchdowns, but a potential return for a touchdown that Harlon Barnett referenced in the press conference today. And then there's other potential, not just Angelo Gross's interception. That was great, but there's other opportunities that they didn't cash in on. And so he feels like they're in the process. And the way he described it was that we've been sowing in terms of planting seeds. Now it's time to reap. And these guys, I believe they feel like they're close. Harlon Barnett says that they're close. And I'm going to take their word for it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy on this weekend. I don't care what Iowa stats say. Mm-hmm. Playing Iowa at Iowa is a different type of animal, and Iowa's going to go into this game every bit as hungry as Michigan State is, coming off a really, really bad showing against Penn State, a good Penn State team.
Yeah, Iowa at night at home, they're looking to get well soon, and they see Michigan State coming to town, and they're looking like that's a mark. We can get that win. So Michigan State's going to play tough and competitive this weekend. I'll have to look at more closely at that Iowa game and the Iowa State game to see what Iowa looks like. We know their struggles on offense, but for Michigan State, they've got to avoid turnovers. That's become a problem all of a sudden. I mean, not only did Noah Kim throw 2 interceptions, he had about 2 or 3 other close ones that were dangerous decisions. And I think I'm guessing that's reflective of him trying to take his game to another level. Again, I mentioned it a bunch of times. Kirk Cousins, we saw that when he was a young starter. Guys, wanting to do too much. I made the comment that after the Washington game that Noah Kim was hit a couple of times and didn't respond to that positively. Easy for me to say up in the press box eating a donut, getting fat. I've never done anything like that. I don't know what that's like. But just watching quarterbacks come through here at some point, staying in the pocket, showing some maintaining that focus and concentration through contact and threat of physical harm to allow your arm talent to come through. He didn't really do that against Washington. It's the first time he's really been hit since high school. So this game, I felt like he was trying to stay in maybe, and I don't want to say overcorrected that part of it, but trying to, after being down 21-0, that can mess with his head, I'm sure, as well. He made some decisions that I'm not sure he'll make every single week, but the pendulum for him, I think, is swinging back and forth, and at some point I think he can become a good all-around quarterback. Whether or not this team this year has the patience to see it all through, I don't know. Iowa is in some ways annually is the most difficult puzzle in the Big Ten. This might not be the best defense they've had in years, but they're going to be good. They're going to be correct. They turn you over. You got a quarterback here that showed a propensity to turn it over. This team, Michigan State, is pretty good if they don't turn it over. So Michigan State, they need his arm talent. They need to push it down the field. They've got receivers that are playing well. There's a happy medium in there somewhere, but it's also thin ice for Michigan State to deal with these things. Avoid turnovers against that defense at night with this quarterback. I was joking with you today. Michigan State, it might be best to punt on third down and just give it back to Iowa at their own 20 and let them have the ball for a while. I say that kind of jokingly. There's a good Michigan State team in there somewhere. This is a tough test. They're all tough tests going forward. But I think Michigan State's going to show up and be pretty good at the line of scrimmage and hit pretty hard and be in this if they don't turn it over.
I mean, the thing to me is about messaging with the coaching staff to the team. Harlon Barnett's talking about being close to turning the corner. J.D. Duplain's talking about being close to having a really good offense. But the one thing that you can't do against Iowa is force it. So the messaging I'd have is, if I was a coaching staff, I'd be like, hey, we are okay, completely okay with the field position game. It is better. It is better to punt.
Yeah.
It is better not to take a risk.
Yes.
Take a sack if you have to.
Yeah.
And
throw it out of bounds on third down. Punt.
And trust your defense. That's the whole message here. Because when things go out, when Iowa scores a lot of points, invariably it's because of the turnover ratio heavily favoring them. And this is not an Iowa team that has Sean Green, or other weapons that they've had in the past, like Brad Banks or whatever at quarterback. This is a team that's the way that they're gonna win is if you beat yourself, and that's how Iowa's built. But this is exactly the case, and it doesn't matter if it's 0-0 going into halftime.
No,
but that's something
it could be.
I know people would be like, I can't imagine, like, we're going to be in the press box, but when that happens, if that happens, and there's going to be like a Twitter storm like no other, oh, this is a train wreck, oh, this is a dumpster fire. It doesn't matter. All that matters this weekend is finding a way to get a win. The best way to get a win is doing your job and accepting, when things aren't open, to throw it away. And if it's a 7-0 win, if it's a 7-3 win, if it's a 10-3 win, it's a win. And if Michigan State gets a win in Iowa, it's a huge deal. And it's not going to be easy because there is that propensity when you're a competitor and you think you're close to try to do too much. We saw that happen to Rocky Lombardi when he visited Iowa. Now that Iowa team didn't even have the benefit of the stands that was a 1,000 person crowd when he played during COVID, but it's emblematic of what can happen when things fall apart when you try to do too much. Now, I think the difference between this Michigan State team and that Michigan State team is on the lines. I think Michigan State has a little bit more physicality, especially on the defensive line, than what they had back then. But the number one thing is, do no harm.
Yeah. And, we talk about low-scoring, ugly games. People might remember the Red Box Bowl when Michigan State was out in San Francisco playing Oregon. Looking back on that, you're playing Herbert, an NFL quarterback, and Mario Cristobal, and that game is 7-7 in the fourth quarter. Michigan State messes up a field goal, and they end up blowing the game. But that wasn't as ugly as a lot of people thought at the time against that Oregon outfit and what Michigan State had way back then. Could be a similar script here, and it might not be. It might not go over real well on the message boards while the game is going on, but that might be the path to victory Michigan State needs in this game. It definitely is. Michigan State played a better offense in Maryland than they'll see at Iowa. They helped Maryland out. We mentioned this in the VCast after the game. Maryland came in number one in the Big Ten, yards per game, 480 yards. Michigan State held them well below their averages, gave them short fields in some ways, and they capitalized. Michigan State, Montorie Foster catches that one, and they go for two and make it. It's 21-17 late in the third quarter, and they are right in it and probably winning that game, Paul, because Michigan State had started to take over the trenches to an extent. Michigan State's run game was operating a little bit better than theirs was. Maybe Tagovailoa would have kicked into gear and saved them. I'm not sure, but if he catches that, that's just one. That changes a lot. Of course, a big turning point was 14-0, Michigan State has the ball back, and Nathan Carter fumbles it deep in their own territory, and that's 21-0, and then it's crisis mode from that point on. But when these players, when they've looked at the film of that game, they individually each feel like they are getting better. That defense with Chance Rucker out there, the things they were able to do, you didn't see. I can't think of any real assignment busts. Maybe there was one, but there was one play when There was the touchdown pass when Angelo Gross and Mangum, Angelo Gross fell and Mangum was a little bit late arriving in that corner. They didn't do that one just right. But Michigan State did some they mixed it up with some things. They did one thing where it's man-to-man with one guy, and they played cover 4 with everybody else and rotated it and did it correctly a few times. They gave up some soft corners here and there with some cover 4, make them throw it, complete it, which they did. But the defense took some steps. I thought Jordan Hall played well at linebacker. Brule did some good things. Even Halliday, they tried to turn him inside out on a wheel route. He covered that all right. Halliday did a good job one time taking on the end man on the line of scrimmage to set the edge, which allowed Derek Harmon to disengage, come in and make a nice tackle. You just saw some decent 11-man defensive football in this game against the good Maryland offense.
Yeah.
When Barnett says to build on things, they do have things to build on.
Well, you look at the Halliday pass where he played pass defense. That wasn't on a plotting tight end. That was on the
85 or
Corey Dyches.
number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and that guy's not really a tight end. He's he's 6'2", 198, but he's fast. He's faster than Connor Hayward was, and he's more of a big wide receiver. And they like to get him in the slot. And they like to get mismatches there. One of the things I was looking at Pro Football Focus last night a little bit for an article I just wrote on Jordan Hall, but both those two linebackers, Halliday, that was one time he was tested in pass defense, but Halliday and Jordan Hall were targeted between both of them. I think it was like 7 times, and there was like only 2 passes complete or 3 passes completed in those 7 times. So Maryland was specifically looking to go after Michigan State's linebackers. Michigan State's linebackers took a big step in the right direction, and I'm kind of with you. Harlon Barnett is excited about what he saw on defense. He saw those guys get their swagger back, their mojo back a little bit, and I feel like, I don't know when it happened in the first half, but I feel like according to what I heard from some of the players, that Talia Tagovailoa maybe got hit and was a little bit slower, and they didn't feel like he was much of a threat. So the defensive line started getting a little bit more pressure. There was a little bit more hitting. They felt like when they started blitzing in the second half that was not a negative against them, and you wouldn't have been able to do that the week prior against a really, really good Washington offense. But I think one of the things that people need to bear in mind is Michigan State's played 2 really good offenses in a row. So it'll be interesting to see if they can take that on the road and how that helps them. Now, this is the first quarterback that they've played that wouldn't be a, quote, capture quarterback. This is a guy that you can potentially light up a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see, depending on who Michigan State gets back, but how that all plays out.
All right, and remember, give us a like here, subscribe to this channel, go to SpartanMag.com. I think that's still, I don't know if it's still the special or not, but we'd love to have you as a Spartan Mag subscriber. SpartanMag.com. Get over there, become a subscriber as we cover this team going forward, and also the coaching search. One other thing about defense, Michigan State came out in the second half, played press man-to-man, single safety deep, like man-to-man, blitzed, third down blitz, cover 3, and did those things and chased him with some blitzes and did not chase him into a play, did not chase him into a broken coverage, broken containment. Now he screwed something up in the back, and they changed some things without screwing things up. That sounds like not a big step, but it is a pretty good step for these guys. As far as Barnett goes, he was asked about how he's doing. He's got this effervescence, this upbeat thing, and like he says, all I can be is me, and that's easy for him to do because that's all he ever is. That's what he is. He's not trying to portray somebody else, and he said he's enjoying this. It's 2-2. It's a crisis situation. He's head coach at Michigan State for another few weeks at the least. And he's just enjoying trying to come out and get wins for Michigan State, which is all he's ever been wired to do anyway, regardless of what's going on, regardless of the opportunity down the road. He's recruiting. He's trying to look for ways to beat Iowa. That's his natural habitat. That is who he is. He is enjoying it. And the players are going to feed off that and take on the personality of their coach. I think that's happening.
And the other thing that he said today that I thought would filter down to the players, and it's always good for players to hear that when they had a couple games where they struggled, when he says, hey, man, football's a game. His message was essentially, and this isn't paraphrased, but football is a game. Go out and have fun. You should be having fun. This should be fun for you. In talking about going on the road to Iowa, experiencing that team bonding that goes with a road trip like this. And I think that's, I know it's cliche and everything about, oh, hey, it's a sport, have fun. But everybody that competes in the sport, it doesn't matter what you play. It can be kind of robotic. It can be kind of like self-defeating sometimes, and you have to remind yourself, or you have to be reminded, that it's okay to have fun. It's okay to be out there and playing a sport that you love, and playing with without worrying about making mistakes, trying to be the best version of yourself possible. And I think that's one thing about Harlon Barnett, the positive energy. I also like when he was asked about, J.D. Duplain saying that they wanted to win some games for Harlon Barnett, but Barnett, his first thing was, hey man, it's not about me. This is my university. This is my team. It's about us. Everything is about this program. Yeah. That's very, very reminiscent of Mark D'Antonio when he came into the program. Everything was about the program, not the individuals. Not the star players, not the coaches, not the coordinators. It was about what we're doing as a team, and I think that when times are tough, it's good to have that galvanizing effect, and I think it will help out. It'll help at least it might not show in the wins and losses, but it will help keep this team together. So you're not going to have a Category 5 dumpster fire.
It gives them a chance to come through this. Okay, and Barnett, with him, it's genuine. I mean, it was genuine with D'Antonio too, and D'Antonio became that way and learned behavior as a Michigan State guy. Barnett's been a Michigan State guy since he was 18 years old. I mean, that's genuinely who he is. He's not putting on an act there, and some players will follow. Later this week, Tucker will officially be fired, and players will have a chance to go into the portal. They'll have 30 days to go in. I'll be intrigued to see who goes in and whether they keep playing, if there's going to be anybody that doesn't play anymore. And Barnett, he's being genuine about things, but some of that is pragmatic also. He's preying upon their Spartan dogness right now. I don't think he's trying to manipulate anything, but his genuine approach to this, I think, is going to make it harder for anyone to step away and leave this team. Duplain said no one has 1 foot in, everybody's 2 feet in. Now that's probably just him talking about him and his offensive linemen and maybe his friends on the team. But it's going to be intriguing. What do you suspect is going to happen in terms of the number of players going into the portal? Will they just go in and continue to play like we saw in the Peach Bowl and the spring practice a couple of years ago? Or do you think we might see a couple of guys that just shut it down and leave the team?
There might be some guys that shut it down and leave the team, but I would suspect that those guys that shut it down and leave the team, it's going to bring the guys that stay even closer. Now, I don't understand. Personally, for me, if I was on a team like this, I was in that position, I don't think I would leave and go to the porthole mid-season, like after week 4. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why going in right now would benefit you as opposed to going in during the off season, then seeing what happens with the coaching.
Legally, it allows other coaches to contact you.
Well, I understand.
They're still contacting. Coaches are not necessarily contacting right now. There's a legal contact going on.
Well, I understand that, but the guys that would go in right now, I mean.
They go in so they can legally talk to other programs.
I understand that, but the guys that are going in, or the guys that would be most likely to go in, tend to be guys that haven't played yet. And
I don't know.
That's what I would suspect. But
this is uncharted territory. I'm not sure what to expect. You might be right. Go ahead.
But I mean, just like optically, if I was like Harlon Barnett, I'd say to these guys, do what you got to do, but you've got other opportunities to go in the portal if you need to. Going in right now, I think, especially if you're a younger player and you haven't played and you still have four games available to play without losing your red shirt. If you go in now as a freshman or a true freshman or a sophomore that hasn't played, I think the likelihood of you getting on the field and being entrusted with a position, I just don't see that, because to me it'd be like, I'm not. Where's this head at? Do I trust him in that situation? What happened in the Peach Bowl, in the kind of the postseason in 2021, there's a lot of players that were in. There's several players that were in the portal but played in the Peach Bowl. That was different. That was kind of weird. But I can understand it. Then you've got players that are going in the portal that have played regular roles, but want to go to a situation. Guys like Jacob Isaiah, guys like James Ohamba, guys that were in that like kick protection unit, field goal kick protection unit, or on special teams. Going in, like those guys played special teams roles. You could trust them to do that. I'm not sure if I'd be so inclined to let a guy play if he hasn't played yet and went into the portal. So I think that there's that. But I also think you're talking about Duplain, is he just talking to offensive linemen? I don't think so. I think it's a team-wide conversation. Like Aaron Brule was saying after the game, that they've had team meetings where, hey, anybody that has a concern, go and speak it. Everybody get it out, and they've had multiple opportunities to come together as not just offense, not just O-line, not just position group, but as teams. And I think these guys are staying pretty close together. I think they've done more team bonding type stuff with player initiatives. Team leaders doing that, and I think that's a good thing. But if this team is going to stay together and become a team that can go to a bowl game, the real key there is to keep the young guys that might have to play. They've got to keep their heads in it, and that's going to be a challenge for the coaching staff as well as older players. So these guys can't block out everything, and they're not worried about, hey, what do I do in the future?
Mm-hmm. I think it's new territory in terms of what players or what they're going to do. I think there's a chance some starters could enter the portal and keep playing, and there's some starters that might opt out and maintain a redshirt year, but so they don't lose eligibility. But by the same token, a lot of players want to have their film on tape or on the field, so that if they do go to the portal, they can get as much NIL money as they want to. So it's new territory all the way around.
I would be surprised if starters just the way kids are wired and what they think. I mean,
they always think they're closer to the NFL than
exactly.
They might be.
And I'm just thinking, I'm not even going to name any names on this roster, but there's guys that have not played a single snap for Michigan State out there that think they're going to the NFL.
Right.
And if you're playing as a starter on this team, to shut it down just so you can save a redshirt year, that doesn't jive in general. I'm not saying that there couldn't be isolated instances of that, but that doesn't jive with the way kids today are wired. I just don't see it.
I agree. I'll throw a name out there. I've not heard anything, but someone like Simeon Barrow, who might be playing hurt a little bit right now, who's not redshirted. He could shut it down at 4 games right now and preserve redshirt status, but is he thinking, no, I'm closer to the NFL if I just keep playing? I don't know, but these are things that the players have to talk about. In the meantime, Barnett is just being himself, and that's resonating with players, and they came out and played hard. Man, down 21-3 at halftime, they came out hard. It's pretty inspirational to watch them. And they were close to really turning that game around. Northwestern came back and beat Minnesota. Same score, same margin. I think Michigan State was really close to having an amazing breakthrough against Maryland. They were close. And when Barnett says they're close, I believe him. The Iowa game on the road, if it were a 3:30 game, I'd give Michigan State a little more chance. The night game, maybe it's not a great Iowa team, but we've seen other teams go into Iowa and play night games, and we've always said, man, that's going to be close no matter what you think. When Iowa's an underdog, that's going to be close. Well, now Iowa's going to be the favorite at home. Michigan State with a lot to prove. It's going to be a tough Big Ten game, and we'll be there to cover it. Anything else, Paul? All right, we're gonna sign off right now. Appreciate everybody checking out SpartanMag.com. Become a Spartan Mag subscriber if you are not already. If you are a subscriber, thanks for your support. For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. You've been watching the VCast from East Lansing with the Spartans. SpartanMag.com.